Hey, it's Mazzy. Happy New Year, 2023. This is my first video of the year, but this video looks back at 2022. This is the last of my best of videos. I've done a series of them. These are the best new albums of 2022. Now, that's such a subjective thing. There's so many best of lists, and sometimes it's a one person, it's a critic, it's a committee from a magazine or a publication or on YouTube or anywhere. It's a collective decision. This is not that. This is just moi, giving my opinion on my favorite records of 2022. And now this is about new records that came out. A couple of new artists, but just people have put out new records. Now, not like the past, not archival, not reissues. So if you say, why didn't you include Neil Young's Toast? Well, that was in another best of I included of archival, but that's a 20-year-old music. I know it just came out now, but that is not what this is about. See, I trip over my lips. The year is so new. I'm just speechless, really speechless. So I'm gonna start out with some bubbling under, and then I'll go into my top 10 list. Again, rankings are near impossible, but I did it because you seem to want it, and I think they're fun. But I want to show a record that I missed on my archival reissue video, which I can't believe I missed this. And I showcased Blemish by David Sylvian. 2003, I believe this originally came out. I've been waiting for this record. It's one of my all-time favorite records, but it's really not a record easily accessible to some people. It's moody, it's electronic, it's an artifact of the studio, and the gorgeous baritone of David Sylvian's voice was in the British band Japan, the sort of new wave glammy, but then they got more experimental as time went on. David Sylvian has collaborated with a lot of great avant-garde artists, folky artists, electronic artists, and made some amazing records over the year. But to me, this is one of his masterpieces, not as song-based as earlier records like, Dead Bees, Beehive, and those records, but I just love this record. So I think this is probably the best, maybe, reissue of the year, and I omitted it, and I'm just gobsmacked, and I'm ashamed of myself, literally, that I left this off that list. So before I hit my top 10, I have one more record, and this is a record I almost put in my top 10, but I realized I could not. But I love this record. And this is Bruce Springsteen's Only the Strong Survive. This is the first of 2 volumes, apparently, of soul covers by Bruce Springsteen. Now, interesting thing of this, the hardcore Springsteen fans hated this record before they heard it a note. Then they heard the first song, the first single, and they hated it even more. They hated the idea. They sort of took possession of Bruce Springsteen, like he owed them everything. He has to put out the archival stuff. He has to do a new record. He's getting old. He hasn't written anything since, it drove me crazy. And it almost made me want to like it more before I even heard it. But Bruce does some of his favorite soul songs on this record, and he does them really well. They're really catchy. They're really accessible. No, they're not better than the originals. But I always see these albums as introducing people to music they may not know of. When someone does a cover album, I mean, obviously some of the songs are very similar in terms of the arrangements, and all the band was not in one place at one time. It was, again, just during the pandemic, at the end of the pandemic, when producers were putting down tracks and Bruce comes in and does his overdubbing and singing. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. But this is a fun record. This is a party record. This is an enjoyable record. And if Bruce wants to take some time, after all the things he's recorded for you and me and himself, I applaud him for doing these records. I mean, a lot of people do cover records, and some pull it off and some don't. And, you have Bruce doing these great, wonderful cover soul songs. It's quite an achievement. It's quite a chore, and you can never live up to originals like this. Now, I think a lot of people, I'd say half these soul songs a lot of his fans probably never heard. And Bruce has a history of doing covers, and throughout when I first saw him starting in '75, Born to Run tour, he would do Mitch Ryder covers and rock and roll covers, and this stuff fits in. Remember, the radio in the '60s and the '70s, it wasn't as segregated as things are now in many cases, and we would hear some of these great songs. Now, doesn't succeed on every track, but I just think this is a wonderful record. I'm looking forward to the next one, and let the artist have a good time and make a fun party record. So there we go with this. Now let's get to the top 10. These are my top 10 new records for 2022. Okay, coming at number 10 is Thus Love, and this is Memorial. This is a really catchy record. It's got a little bit of a jangle pop. I think the lead singer, I suppose that's him, has a bit of a vocal pattern and sound, not as deep like Peter Murphy of Bauhaus. Now, they don't sound like Bauhaus. They're not as dark and moody and brooding as Peter Murphy on his solo records, or not even, the offshoot Love and Rockets, but it's got the jingle jangle stuff, the pop stuff, the Bauhaus Peter Murphy song, very catchy, short songs, very accessible also. And I think as for a debut album, this is a really interesting record. They come from Vermont, at least they're based in Vermont. I don't know where the original members came from. So coming in at number 10 on my list is Thus Love. Okay, number 9 is a band that has been around about 30 years now, and they were based in San Francisco, and I never listened to them at the time, and I heard their name. I thought their name was brilliant, and it's Brian Jonestown Massacre. Their new album, Fire Doesn't Grow on Trees. After the San Francisco bout, I think they went and traveled to New York and were based there for a while. Now they're based in Berlin, where this is recorded. And Anton Newcomb is their leader and main songwriter and singer. And this is a really good album. Obviously, it's another one of these albums around this time that has come out of the pandemic and lockdown. There's a trance-like feel as this opens up, but it gets into psychedelic pop music, catchy guitar riffs, long, jammy guitar riffs, and it's got sort of that psychedelic, I have to say sheen, because that makes it sound like it is slick, and it's anything but. So coming in at number 9, Brian Jonestown Massacre, Fire Doesn't Grow on Trees. And this is Get On Board. And this is this wonderful sort of retro record of Taj Mahal and Ry Cooder with Joaquin Cooder on production. And they haven't played together since they started a band called the Rising Suns. Their record was recorded by Terry Melcher for Columbia Records, never released until way into the 90s, I believe, the CD era. Now this record is unique because it is influenced, obviously, because of this. And this is Get On Board, Negro folk songs by the Folk Masters, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGhee. Sonny Terry and Brownie McGhee, great blues, guitar, harmonica, folk blues. And this is not a cover of track by track of that exact record, which is a 10-inch, but this takes songs that Sonny Terry and Brownie McGhee would be playing historically. So it has some things from that and other songs on here. Midnight Special, Deep Sea Diver, What a Beautiful City, Drinking Wine, Spodioti. Just hearing these two play together, acoustic bass, harmonica, vocals, it's just a really, really wonderful thing. I had the pleasure to go down to the Great American Music Hall and see them. They did one show in San Francisco, didn't do a tour of this album, which is unfortunate. But of course they recreate this Smithsonian Folkways album cover. And it's my favorite Roots album of the year, and it comes in at number 8 on my top list of new releases in 2022. Coming in number 7, and switching gears a lot, probably the best dance record, at least. I don't buy a lot of dance records, but I am a fan of Beyonce, and this album is called Renaissance. This is a massive achievement for Beyonce to do this record. It gets you off your feet. So if you're sitting in your chair and you're listening to the chair, that's all you want to do, listen to music. This is probably not for you, but it should be. If you're buying these one-steps and these single origin $100 versions of Michael Jackson records, get this instead. If you have original, you don't need that. Get this instead. 2 records and a book. It's a massive production, both musically and visually. It has this booklet that is very much like a fashion magazine, editorial spread, but just really done well. And so I think this is a great, fun party record. Now, I was a big fan of Lemonade, the album she did 3-4 years ago. That is a more adventurous record. That's a more conceptual record. This is a more in-your-face, get off your ass and do something about it record. And it's very successful. I really like it. It's got a great sound to it, really well produced. But so of course you'd expect it to be. So coming in at number 7, Beyonce's Renaissance. I amuse myself sometimes. Coming in number 6 is an artist that I got into in the 1990s and then into the 2000s, and she kind of created this subgenre called folktronic, and that's Beth Orton. And I haven't followed her in the last decade, 15 years, as much as I did in the first part of her career. She has a folk sound. She has a real electronic feel to some of her recordings, a lot of her recordings. Early records, she did collaborations with William Orbit, who had worked with everyone from Madonna to so many other great artists at the time, mixing that 90s electronic sound with pop music and upbeat music. And this is a fantastic record. This is called Weather Alive. It starts off with this sort of moody piano and really a slow vibe to it. And it's really, really good. There's mixed flutes and horns. And what's really great about this is there are a couple upbeat songs, but the rhythm of this is by Tom Skinner of Friends of Kesmet. I think that's the name of the band. And he is an amazing drummer with his polyrhythmic sounds. It's a little more subtle on this record. He's going to turn up on one of my top records also on this list here a little later. But I love this record. So it's got a bit of a folk, a little neoclassical, but throughout these piano bits and mood pieces, there are flutes and horns and just beautifully coming in and out of them and keeping the mood alive. Again, there's a couple of tracks that get more upbeat, but I just love her. I love her voice. I think it's a really unique voice because it's not a perfect voice. It's a little abstract, a little edgy. She's a British singer, songwriter, folky, modernist woman, and I just love this record. She was on the big comeback album, one of the last albums by Bert Jansch of Pentangle, where she sang on several of the tracks, and I just really like that. And this was a surprise to me. I didn't expect it, and I heard it, and I played it, and it's been on my turntable a lot over the last several months. So coming in at number 6, Beth Orton. Coming in at number 5 is Fasora by Bjork. Again, another artist whose visuals are up there to match the music inside her records. She always mixes that sort of post-punk electronic avant-garde sound of music that really pushes the limits in some ways of popular music. A lot of classical bits, a lot of string instruments and things, and this is another great record in her catalog here. Beck, Fasora, another record to blast on the turntable. Her vocals, the edits, the cuts, the arrangements, unique and like nothing else on pop charts. And again, it crosses over from pure pop catchiness to the avant-garde and electronica. So love this record by Bjork. Coming in now at number 4 is Diane Coffey. This album is called With People. This is Diane Coffey's second solo album. Diane Coffey was the drummer under the name Sean Fleming, his real name, with Foxygen, and went out and on his own and started doing these albums. I got turned on to the first album by Vinyl Richie. If you don't know Vinyl Richie, I'll put a link below. But this is the most beautiful pop album of 2022. This is the catchiest album. This is like sunshine pop. This is like a mix of the Association, of Jellyfish, of Management, of Freddie Mercury. His vocals, her arrangements, their arrangements are just, they're clever. They're a little higher pitch than Freddie's, but just really, I think they're really intricate arrangements, but they seem so simple because they're so poppy. This is a fun fuck record. This is an amazing record. This sounds good. This makes you smile. This is like nothing else in this list, but it's just really, really enjoyable and very, very catchy. The arrangements are really unique and really fun. So coming in at number 4, Diane Coffey with People. Coming in at number 3 for me this year is an album that I heard that the Archivist picked up, and I kept hearing bits of it, and every time I heard it, it didn't sound like it was the same artist. and I finally sat down, listened to it, and then I finally picked it up a few months later. And that is the 5th album by Big Thief. They're out of Brooklyn. And the album is called Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You. That's a mouthful, right? This is a sprawling double record. Now, they are I think they're kind of pegged as a folky roots band, country folky roots band out of Brooklyn. This record, there's so much going on this record. I mean, in a way, to some, this would be a disjointed record. It's disjointed in the way that Fleetwood Mac's Tusk is disjointed in the way the Beatles' White Album is disjointed. I mean, look how, some of this record seems like, just like this. That's a sketch, right? Look at that sketch on the cover. The album seems like sketches. Some of the songs seem incomplete. Some of them seem, you hear a little bit of a studio chatter at the beginning or the end. It starts out very country-like, very rootsy-like, with acoustic guitars, female vocals throughout the main singer, fiddle playing, Jew's harp on a couple of tracks. Then you hear, other wind instruments, some electronic artifacts. I mean, it gets into some weird psychedelic stuff too. Quirky lyrics that don't always rhyme, don't always fit together. And every time I put a side of this record on, it's like a different album the band made over years. But obviously, they did this, apparently recorded it in 4 different cities. I don't know if it matches 4 different sides of the record or the mood, what they were doing. But there's something about this, with all the mumble jumble, with all the variety of genres, of jumping genres, it fits together. And the more you play this record, it fits together even more. And it's soulful Appalachian music out of Brooklyn. That's all I can say. If that makes any sense. Probably doesn't, but that doesn't matter. The thing is, it doesn't matter, but it's I love it. And it's one of those albums you want to put on because you realize, did I remember that right? It's a very creative record, but it's a very organic record in its, it seems like in its development, just seemed very, let's try this today. I don't know how many of these songs they pre-wrote before, taking them to the studio and created the studio atmospheres and things. There's some drone stuff in it. I mean, it's really a good mix that works ultimately. Big Thief's new album, Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You, is number 3 in Mazzy's 2022 list. Coming in number 2 is The Smile. This almost was number 1, and it easily could be number 1. It's probably the best album of the year when you come to think of it. But you'll see why I picked the other one. I'll tell you why, and you won't see why. I'll tell you why I picked my number 1 choice. This is Tom Skinner again from Sons of Kemet, the drummer, with these polyrhythms. So this is the second time he appears on this list. He was on the Beth Orton doing those drums, those polyrhythmic sort of African drum beats and bass and beats. And this is, in a way, a mini super group of Johnny Greenwood and Tom York from Radiohead. That's why it sounds like, easily, when, Tom York, you can't escape Tom York thinking it's a Tom York solo record or a Radiohead record. It's got that to begin with. And you got the electronic sounds, you got the rhythms, you got the voice. It's gonna remind you of Radiohead. And so if you're not into Radiohead, you probably won't be into this, although this is very accessible, very original, very dynamic, and really a great, great sound to it, the record. Nigel Godrich, who produced the Radiohead records, is on this too. It's a producer and collaborator. And this has so much going on. And there's some very catchy riffs and beats and bass playing and just everything about it. Electronic, Afrobeat, post-punk, a modern record, a clever record, a really good sounding record. So coming in number 2 is The Smile. When this came out, this immediately was my number 1 record this year. I think it came out in the first quarter of the year. And I just love this record. In a way, my number 1 pick is the most commercial. It's got the best hooks. It's a heroic album. It's got reminders of other artists. And my number 1 album of the year is Bronco by Orville Peck. This is his second full length. He did an EP during lockdown, during pandemic. This is his debut on Columbia Records. This is a cowboy record. This is an anthemic record. It's got shades of Bruce Springsteen, shades of Roy Orbison, his voice, even Chris Isaac. His voice is heroic. It's cowboy. His, Southern accent, even though I think he's from South Africa through Canada, through wherever, he's got this hybrid mix. He's got this, amazing sound, an amazing voice. What a great songwriter. Now, his first solo album on Sub Pop with that red cover, he wears this kind of leather variations, hidden mask. He's like the unknown comic cowboy in a way. It seems like a gimmick. It could be a gimmick, but it's not. I saw him at an in-store at Easy Street Records when that first album came out, and he was amazing live. He's a cowboy rock and roll star, and he pulls it off really well. Do you remember the heroics of Born to Run? Do you remember the Roy Orbison, In Dreams? And that's what this has. Catchy riffs, very commercial. In a different time, a different place, some of these songs would be all over the top charts. Maybe it's too esoteric for the days now with pop music, what it is, but it's a very fully realized, wonderful, wonderful record, wonderfully produced. It's got a wall of sound in a way, not like a Phil Spector wall of sound, but like a Bruce Springsteen doing a Phil Spector wall of sound. And it's so heroic, and it's so fun. It's the funnest record next to maybe Diane Coffee, which is poppy, quirky, melodic fun. This isn't that, but this is just, I had to do that, but it's not like that at all. So don't not buy it because of my vocal arrangement there, but I love this record. So coming in at number 1 is Orville Peck, Bronco. The best new albums of 2022. Looking forward to more great music this year, revisiting my entire library as well as new releases. So thanks for watching. List yours, put comments, subscribe, do all the good things. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the music. Mazzy loves you.